You never forget the smell of gunpowder after a bullet rips through the air. Even months later, the memory lingers, like smoke in the back of your throat that refuses to clear. Every time I look at Carla, the memory of that night comes flooding back. I can still see her lying on the floor of that church, bleeding out, her chest barely rising and falling. We made it through that night, but the wound, both the physical and emotional ones, have stayed with us. Carla walks with a slight limp now, the bullet that hit her leaving behind more than just a scar. And me? I've had to live with the knowledge that someone out there was willing to kill her just to keep our family's secrets buried. The investigation into the murder of Carla's great-uncle was officially reopened after the shooting. The police were forced to confront decades of corruption, of covered-up crimes, and of lies that had kept the truth hidden for so long. But true justice? It still feels just out of reach. Detective Graham, the man who had been chasing this case for years, came back into our lives soon after Carla's recovery. He was an old-school detective, the type who never let go of a lead, even when it seemed like a dead end. He had always believed that something more sinister was at play, and now, with the reopening of the case, he had the chance to prove it. "We're getting close, Albert," he told me one evening, leaning against his car as I walked home. "The truth is coming out. I just hope you're ready for what we're going to find." I wasn't sure if I was ready. Carla and I had spent so long unraveling the lies that we hadn't stopped to think about what would happen when we finally reached the end of the road. There were still people out there who wanted us dead. The shooting at the church proved that much. But Graham was right. We were too far into this to turn back now. Carla and I spent the next few weeks working closely with Detective Graham, poring over old files, documents, and witness statements. We dug deeper into the night of the original murder, following a trail of evidence that pointed to one thing. Someone from the town had been behind the entire cover-up. It was a local power player, Mr. Thompson, a real estate mogul and community leader, who had orchestrated the murder and the decades of silence that followed. He had been using his wealth and influence to control both sides of the town's racial divide, keeping both our families in his pocket while fostering an atmosphere of hate that worked to his benefit. Carla's great-uncle had been killed because he found out what Thompson was doing, and my grandfather had been paid off to help cover it up. It made me sick to think about how much blood had been spilled to keep Thompson's empire intact. One evening, just as we were starting to feel like we had enough evidence to finally take Thompson down, a letter arrived at Carla's house. It was similar to the one we'd received before. No return address, no signature, just a single sentence written in bold letters. "Stop, or Carla won't survive the next bullet." Carla was shaking when she handed me the letter. I felt that familiar rage boiling up inside of me, but I knew we couldn't stop. Not now. Not when we were so close. "Thompson's trying to scare us," I told her, trying to sound more confident than I felt. "He knows he's cornered." But even as I said it, I knew we had to be careful. Thompson was desperate, and desperate men did desperate things. We decided to take the evidence straight to Detective Graham the next morning, but we never made it there. Thompson's men found us first. We were driving to the police station when a black SUV swerved in front of us, forcing us off the road. 3 men stepped out, armed and ready, their faces hidden beneath ski masks. They didn't have to say anything. We knew what this was. They were here to silence us, once and for all. Carla clutched my arm, fear in her eyes, but I couldn't let them win. Not after everything we'd been through. Before they could reach us, Detective Graham's unmarked car came screeching down the road. He must have been following us, keeping an eye on things. His gun was already out as he stepped out of the car, yelling for the men to drop their weapons. A tense standoff followed. Graham, outnumbered but unwilling to back down. The three men ready to shoot at any moment, and Carla and me caught in the middle, praying we'd make it out alive. In the end, the gunfight was short but brutal. Graham shot two of the men before they could fire a single shot, and the third surrendered, hands in the air, realizing he was outmatched. It was over. Graham arrested the remaining thug, and the evidence we had gathered against Thompson was more than enough to bring him down. Within days, Thompson was in police custody, facing charges not only for the murder of Carla's great-uncle, but also for decades of corruption, blackmail, and other crimes. The town was in shock. For years, Thompson had been seen as a pillar of the community, a man who had helped build the town up. But now the truth was out. He was nothing more than a criminal, hiding behind a facade of respectability. The day Thompson was sentenced felt like the closing of a long, painful chapter. Carla and I stood side by side in the courthouse, watching as the man who had caused so much pain in both of our families was led away in handcuffs. But justice, as sweet as it was, didn't erase the scars. It didn't bring back the people we'd lost, or erase the hate that had festered in our town for so long. It didn't fix the damage that had been done, but it was a start. The neighborhood changed after that. People were forced to confront the truth about the hate that had been simmering beneath the surface for so long. My father, who had once been one of the biggest voices of division, had changed too. He wasn't the man he used to be. The truth had broken something in him, and while we hadn't fully reconciled, there was a quiet understanding between us now. The air smelled different now, crisper, cleaner. There was no more gunpowder in the air, no more fear hanging over us like a dark cloud. Carla and I could walk through the neighborhood without feeling like targets, without wondering if we'd make it through another day. We survived. We uncovered the truth, and while it cost us so much, it also brought us closer. Closer to each other, closer to the justice we had fought for. And while we knew that the world wasn't perfect, that hate could never be fully erased, we also knew that love, our love, was stronger than any bullet, stronger than any lie. The smell of true justice isn't something you can describe easily, but it's there, lingering in the background, like a promise. A promise that, no matter how hard the road gets, the truth will always find a way to come out, and when it does, you'll finally be free.